The emergency lights flashing in my rearview mirror were not what I expected to see on a peaceful Sunday morning while clearing snow from my own driveway in Summit County, Colorado. I had lived in Breckenridge for 3 years now, and this was the first time anyone had complained about me using my John Deere tractor to clear the heavy snowfall that had dumped nearly 2 feet overnight. My name is William Ingram, and I am a 42-year-old software engineer who moved to Colorado from California, seeking a quieter life in the mountains. What I got instead was a nightmare wrapped in passive-aggressive notes and a homeowners association president who seemed to have made it her personal mission to make my life miserable. The officer stepped out of his patrol car, and I killed the engine on my tractor, watching as a second vehicle pulled up behind him. It was a pearl-white Lexus SUV that I recognized immediately as belonging to Patricia Henderson, the 53-year-old HOA president who had been a thorn in my side since the day I moved in. She was a typical suburban warrior with her helmet of bleached blonde hair, designer athleisure where that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and an expression that could curdle milk at 50 paces. I climbed down from the tractor, my boots crunching in the fresh snow, and walked toward the officer with my hands visible. Living in America meant I knew how to interact with police, even when I had done absolutely nothing wrong. The officer was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a weathered face that suggested he had seen plenty of mountain winters himself. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" I asked, genuinely confused about why law enforcement had been called to my property for snow removal. "Are you William Ingram?" he asked, pulling out a small notebook. "Yes, sir, I own this property." "What's this about?" Patricia marched up before the officer could respond, her face flushed with indignation. "Officer Morrison, thank you for coming so quickly. This man is operating heavy machinery in violation of our HOA regulations. Section 12, Paragraph 4 clearly states that all snow removal must be done by HOA-approved contractors. He's creating a hazard and disturbing the peace." I stared at her in disbelief. "Patricia, it's my property. I'm clearing my own driveway with my own tractor. There's nothing illegal about that. The HOA regulations are legally binding, William. You signed them when you purchased your home." "Officer Morrison, I insist you make him stop immediately and issue him a citation for operating dangerous equipment without proper authorization." Officer Morrison held up his hand, looking between us with the patience of someone who had dealt with far too many HOA disputes. "Madam, let me handle this. Mr. Ingram, do you have documentation showing you own this property?" "Of course. Give me just a moment." I trudged through the snow back to my house, a beautiful 3-bedroom mountain home with large windows overlooking the surrounding peaks. Inside, I grabbed my property deed from the filing cabinet in my home office, along with the survey documents I had received during closing. Something told me I would need every piece of paper I could get. When I returned, Patricia was still talking rapidly to Officer Morrison, who looked like he was contemplating early retirement. 2 more neighbors had emerged from their homes, attracted by the commotion. I recognized Doug and Martha Stevenson from 3 houses down, both retirees who had always been friendly to me. "Here's my deed, officer," I said, handing over the documents. He began reviewing them carefully, his eyes scanning the legal description and the property boundaries. Patricia tried to grab the papers from his hands. "That's irrelevant, officer. The HOA regulations supersede individual property rights when it comes to community standards and safety." "Madam, that's not actually how property law works," Officer Morrison said calmly, continuing to read. His eyebrows rose slightly as he studied the survey map, and then he looked up at me with something resembling respect. "Mr. Ingram, can you show me where your property lines are?" "Sure." I pointed to the metal stakes that marked the corners of my lot. "The property extends from that pine tree there, straight back to the rock outcropping, and then over to that line of aspens. It's 2.5 acres total." The officer looked at Patricia. "Madam, according to this deed, Mr. Ingram's property is not actually part of your homeowners association. The legal description shows his lot was carved out of a larger parcel before the HOA was established. His property predates your association by 17 years. The color drained from Patricia's face, but she recovered quickly. "That's impossible. Every home in this area is part of Silver Ridge HOA. I have the maps in my office." "Your maps are wrong," Officer Morrison said flatly. He handed my deed back to me. "Mr. Ingram, you're free to use your tractor or any other equipment on your property as you see fit, as long as you're following local noise ordinances, which you are, since it's 10 in the morning on a Sunday." He turned to Patricia. "Madam, I'm going to need you to leave this property immediately. You've made a false report to emergency services, and if you continue to harass Mr. Ingram, he has grounds to file for a restraining order." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "This is outrageous. I am the HOA president. I have authority over this neighborhood." "Not over property that isn't in your HOA, you don't," the officer replied. "And calling 911 for non-emergencies is a misdemeanor offense. I'm going to let you off with a warning this time, but if I get called out here again for something like this, you'll be facing charges. Do you understand?" The satisfaction I felt watching Patricia's entitled expression crumble was probably petty, but after 3 years of her harassment, I was not going to apologize for enjoying it. She spun on her designer boots and stalked back to her Lexus, leaving deep, angry prints in the snow. Officer Morrison turned to me with a tired smile. "Sorry about that, Mr. Ingram. We get a lot of HOA calls, but this one takes the cake. You might want to send a certified letter to the HOA board informing them that your property is not under their jurisdiction. Might save you some headaches down the road." "Thanks, officer, I'll do that." I shook his hand and he headed back to his patrol car. Doug and Martha walked over, both grinning. "That was better than Sunday morning television," Doug said with a chuckle. "We always wondered why you never came to the HOA meetings. Now it makes sense." "I had no idea my property wasn't part of the association until just now," I admitted. "But it explains why none of the HOA stuff was mentioned during my closing. I just assumed the previous owner had already paid the fees or something." "The previous owner was old Pete Morrison," Martha said. "He bought that land back in 1987, way before Silver Ridge was developed. Built that house himself. Pete was Officer Morrison's uncle, actually. He passed away 5 years ago, and the property sat empty for a while before you bought it. The pieces were clicking into place. I had purchased the house through an estate sale, dealing directly with Pete Morrison's daughter who lived in Florida. The price had been remarkably fair, and the house, though needing some updating, was solid and well built. Now I understood why Patricia had always seemed extra hostile toward me. She probably realized from the beginning that she had no actual authority over my property, but had been hoping I would not figure it out. Over the next few days, I did exactly what Officer Morrison suggested. I hired a real estate attorney named Rebecca Chen who specialized in property law, and we drafted a comprehensive letter to the Silver Ridge HOA board, complete with copies of my deed, survey maps, and a legal opinion stating that my property was definitively not subject to HOA regulations or fees. The letter was sent via certified mail to Patricia Henderson, the 4 other board members, and the HOA's management company. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The following Saturday, I woke up to find a bright orange construction fence surrounding my driveway entrance. Large signs proclaimed no parking private HOA property and blocked access to my garage. I stood in my bathrobe and slippers, staring at the barrier in disbelief while my coffee grew cold in my hand. My phone rang. It was my neighbor Doug. "William, you'd better get out here. Patricia's got a work crew blocking your driveway. Says she's reclaiming HOA common area." "I'm already looking at it, Doug. This is insane." I threw on jeans and a jacket and marched down to where Patricia stood directing 2 workers in high-visibility vests. She was holding a clipboard and wearing a satisfied expression that made my blood boil. "Patricia, you need to remove this fence immediately. You're blocking access to my property." "Actually, William, after consulting with our HOA attorney, we've determined that the access easement to your property crosses HOA common land. While your house may not be part of our association, the driveway access is. We're within our rights to regulate it." "That's complete garbage, and you know it. My deed includes a deeded right-of-way. You can't block legal access to my property." She shrugged. "Take it up with your lawyer. Until then, this fence stays up. You can park on the street like everyone else." I pulled out my phone and called Rebecca Chen. It was early Saturday morning, but this was an emergency. She answered on the 3rd ring, and I quickly explained the situation. "That's illegal on about 5 different levels," Rebecca said, sounding furious. "I'm calling the sheriff's office right now. Don't remove the fence yourself. Let law enforcement handle it so there's an official record." It took 45 minutes for a deputy to arrive. In that time, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered. Some seemed to support Patricia, nodding along as she explained her interpretation of property rights. Others, like Doug and Martha, clearly thought she had gone too far. The deputy was a young woman named Deputy Ramirez, who looked like she had been hoping for a quiet Saturday patrol. After reviewing my documentation, examining the physical location of the fence, and making several phone calls, Deputy Ramirez ordered Patricia to remove the fence immediately. "Madam, you're interfering with a legal right-of-way. If this fence is not down within 1 hour, I'll have to place you under arrest for obstruction." Patricia's face turned an alarming shade of red. "You can't arrest me for protecting HOA property." "Watch me," Deputy Ramirez replied coolly. She had apparently reached the end of her patience with HOA drama. The fence came down. But the harassment did not stop. Over the next 2 weeks, I received daily violation notices from the HOA for everything imaginable. My house color was allegedly non-compliant, even though it had been the same sage green since it was built in 1989. My mailbox was 3 inches too tall. My outdoor light fixtures were not on the approved list. My lawn ornament, a simple bronze deer statue, was creating visual blight. The notices piled up, each one threatening fines of $200 per day. Rebecca sent cease and desist letters. The notices kept coming. Then things escalated. I came home from work on a Tuesday evening to find a Denver towing company truck backing into my driveway. A worker was attaching chains to my John Deere tractor. "Hey, what are you doing?" I shouted, running across the snow-covered lawn. The worker, a heavy-set man in his 50s, looked up apologetically. "Sorry, buddy. We got a call from the property owner saying this equipment was abandoned and needed to be removed. I'm the property owner, and that tractor is not abandoned. It's mine, and it's staying right here." I pulled out my phone and showed him my driver's license with the address matching my location. Whoever called you lied. He unhitched the chains with a sigh. Not the first time an HOA has pulled this crap. No charge, man. Sorry for the trouble. After he left, I called Rebecca again. She tried to have my tractor towed. This has gone way beyond harassment. What are my options? You can file for a restraining order against Patricia personally, and an injunction against the HOA to cease all contact with you regarding violations or fees. I'll draft the paperwork tonight. We've got enough documented incidents now to make a strong case. And William, I think you should also consider filing a civil suit for harassment. This behavior is costing you time, money, and peace of mind. Do it, I said. I had tried to be reasonable. I had tried to resolve things through proper legal channels. Patricia Henderson had made it clear she would not stop until she had destroyed my life or driven me from my home. It was time to fight back properly. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony was not lost on me as I sat in the Summit County Courthouse with Rebecca, waiting for the judge to call our case. Patricia arrived with her own attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit named Marcus Vaughn who specialized in HOA law. Judge Catherine Brennan was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had a reputation for being extremely fair but tolerating zero foolishness. She reviewed our submitted evidence, which included copies of all the violation notices, photos of the fence blocking my driveway, Deputy Ramirez's incident report, the towing company's statement, and a detailed timeline of every interaction I'd had with Patricia since the snow-clearing incident. Patricia's attorney tried to argue that his client was simply performing her duties as HOA president and had made an honest mistake about which properties fell under the association's jurisdiction. He painted her as a dedicated volunteer trying to maintain community standards, overwhelmed by the complexities of property law. Rebecca destroyed that narrative in about 5 minutes. She presented evidence that Patricia had been on the HOA board for 12 years and had served as president for the last 6. She showed that the HOA's own records from 2010 included a memo specifically noting that my property was not part of the association. She proved that Patricia had personally signed off on that memo. The honest mistake defense evaporated like morning fog. Mrs. Henderson, Judge Brennan said, looking over her reading glasses at Patricia. You've engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment against Mr. Ingram, despite knowing that your HOA has no legal authority over his property. You've called emergency services under false pretenses, physically blocked his access to his home, attempted to have his personal property illegally removed, and bombarded him with fraudulent violation notices. Can you explain why you thought any of this was appropriate? Patricia's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she pushed him aside. Your Honor, that property should be part of Silver Ridge HOA. It's surrounded by our community. Pete Morrison was a stubborn old man who refused to join when the development went in. And now we have this eyesore in the middle of our neighborhood with tractors and equipment visible from the street. Property values are being affected. I have a responsibility to the homeowners who pay their HOA fees. The judge's expression hardened. Mrs. Henderson, whether or not you think property should be part of your association is irrelevant. The law is clear, and you've chosen to ignore it repeatedly. I'm granting the restraining order. You are to have no contact with Mr. Ingram, directly or indirectly. You are not to send him any notices, emails, letters, or messages of any kind. You are to remain at least 100 yards away from him and his property at all times. The HOA as an organization is also enjoined from any contact with Mr. Ingram. If you violate this order, you will face contempt charges and possible jail time. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Patricia said quietly, all the fight drained out of her. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. Rebecca was grinning. That went even better than I expected. Judge Brennan clearly saw through the nonsense. "Now, about that civil suit. Are you still interested in pursuing it?" "Absolutely. How much can we sue for?" Emotional distress, lost wages from time dealing with all this, legal fees and potentially punitive damages given how egregious the conduct was. I'd say we could reasonably ask for $50,000. Whether we get it is another question, but the HOA carries insurance for exactly this kind of thing. We filed the lawsuit the following week. The HOA's insurance company took one look at the evidence and the restraining order and settled out of court for $42,000. It was not about the money for me, though it certainly helped cover Rebecca's fees and compensated me for the nightmare I had endured. It was about holding Patricia and the HOA board accountable for their actions. But apparently, Patricia Henderson was not done yet. In late March, as the snow was finally beginning to melt and reveal the brown grass underneath, I received a visit from two investigators with the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies. They showed me their credentials and asked if they could come inside to discuss some allegations that had been made against me. My stomach dropped. "What kind of allegations?" "We've received reports that you've been operating a commercial snow removal business without proper licensing and insurance. We need to verify your compliance with state regulations." I let them in, completely baffled. "I don't operate a snow removal business. I clear my own driveway with my own tractor. That's it." The investigators, whose names were Agent Summers and Agent Park, exchanged glances. Agent Summers, a tall man with graying temples, pulled out a folder. "We have multiple complaints filed by a Mrs. Patricia Henderson stating that you've been clearing driveways throughout the neighborhood for compensation, operating heavy machinery without commercial insurance, and soliciting business door to door." That's completely.